award-winning entrepreneur and sought-after speaker. Here we have some of his books that he has written, and one of the most recent bestsellers in the bookshops in the Philippines is Real Men Are Pogi. Pogi means handsome in Tagalog. So real men are handsome, and what is man after God's own heart in the area of relationships. So, yep. Now, Arlie also graduated from Sophia University of Management at Stanford University, and also at the Mount Carmel School of Ministry in Israel. He has co-founded top 2 training and learning events companies, and also named one of the Entrepreneur magazine's top 10 entrepreneurs. He is also an alumnus and international facilitator at the Haggai Leadership Institute in Maui, Hawaii. So this morning, he's going to bring to us a topic that's close to our hearts about writing with beautiful feet, sharing the good news today. And for his PowerPoint slides, they are not available on Hoover yet, but by the end of today, they will be made available. And you'll be glad to know all of the workshops, all of the notes and us, they will be available for up to 1 year. Wow. 1 year. So, but I would encourage you to just download it as soon as possible before that 1 year is up. So let's welcome Arlie.
Thank you. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell jokes this morning and last night.
I'm so disappointed.
I forgot to tell them at the end not to quit their day jobs. But it's a pleasure to be here this morning with you all. And the reason I'm not yet up on Google because I just finished them during the last presentation while the other guy was speaking. That's the advantage of speaking at the last page.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're at the tail end. You know, this is just how do you look at the sunset right there? We're at the sunset of this and I hope for many of you, God has spoken to you already, and I hope that it's the beginning of a life-changing experience. Because for me, really, this Littworld, this is my 3rd one. Every time I attend a Littworld conference, you know, God disrupts my plans, and things are never the same again. I hope and pray the same will be with you. Now, this workshop is based on this verse. Could you read it together, please?
How are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news.
So today's session is all about writing with beautiful feet. No matter what you're writing, it is my hope and prayer that after this session, you'll have the mindset to write, to evangelize, to write, to give hope, to write, to share the good news. How many of you are currently writing or have this, baby of a book inside you, as somebody said? Okay, that's most of you. Great. So that is my prayer. So I send greetings from Manila, the Philippines. This is my family. My son Joshua is 10 years old. This is my wife, Miriam is her name, and we're expecting a baby. So it's a miracle baby. My wife is 43 years old. She only has a 1 or 2% chance of becoming pregnant, and by the grace of God, answered prayers. So praise God for that. So that's another book in the making. Maybe the story will be told of how that happened. So my first Littworld was in 2009 in Kenya. How many of you were there? 1, 2. Okay, great. That was a life-changing experience for me. It's my first Littworld. I was, as you may have heard in the introduction, I'm into entrepreneurship, but God, I feel in my heart that God really called me to be a writer. And when I went to Littworld in Kenya, I just felt so much at home. I felt that I was with family, with people who could understand me, because when you're back home and you say, what ministry are you in? You say writing, people look at you. No, really, what ministry are you in? No one really takes seriously the writing ministry, the literature ministry. So this was scenes in Kenya. You recognize this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I met Sasha Fleck works at that Littworld, and his testimony, he shared his testimony, it's something else. So if you have a chance, you better grab him and ask him to share his story. But right after Littworld, I came home pregnant with so many ideas. But as soon as there's Sasha, speaking of the angel. I just mentioned you, Sasha. I was showing pictures of our Littworld together. Yeah. So right after Littworld in Kenya in 2009, I came home, and a few days after, I was literally itching. I don't know why. The day before, on the last day of Littworld, I remember I was running. I was wearing my track shorts and I was running around, and there was a plant that kind of like scraped my leg and started to bleed. And so as I was walking, I saw this aloe vera plant, and so I think aloe vera is for healing. So I took that plant, put it open, and rubbed it on my wound. And lo and behold, a few days later, and a week later, I was itching uncontrollably back home. And I had a test, and to make a long story short, I had a parasitic infection. I brought home a parasite from Kenya. And so every night, maybe because of the time difference, the parasites would wake up at 2 a.m. in Manila, and I would itch like crazy. And because of that, I would stay up, and I remember staying up 2 in the morning up to 6 in the morning, unable to sleep. I felt like Job, scraping his body. I would go to a wall literally, and I would scratch myself like this. I go like that. And sometimes my wife would see my shirt would have like little red dots because of the scratches. So there's like blood that's really coming out of my But you believe in Romans 8:38, right? That all things work for the good. Right? 8:28, sorry. And because I couldn't sleep, I started thinking about, as long as I'm awake, maybe I should start writing. Yeah. And so in the Philippines, there's a saying that if your palm itches, I don't know in other cultures, if your palm itches, money. So I was thinking, what should I write about? And money, and I just read this book that had been around for some time. It's called Buhay na Hindi Bitin. It literally means, the translation is life that is never short. So I said, why not write something about money that's never short, but from the biblical perspective. And so I started writing. And I finished that book, and this is what came out. So this is, pera is money na hindi bitin, that is never short. And because of that parasite from Kenya, I was able to finish that book. Now I don't wish that you come home with a parasite. And it doesn't take a parasite from Singapore to take you to write. But that book, it really opened so many doors. It's a short book, and when I finished it in maybe a month and a half. I gave it to OMF. Ramon Rocha was the publisher then. And I remember going to the bookstore and going to the bestseller list. And I saw all these New Age and all these secular books on the top 10. I said, Lord, if it's your will, may there be a Christian bestseller here. And Lord, I volunteer if that's okay. But Lord, fill the bestseller list with Christian books. And as soon as the book came out a month later. It was number 5, and then it became number 1 for the next 5 months until OMF ran out of stock, really. And in the Philippines, I don't know in your country, a bestseller that you sell maybe 5,000 copies, but this book sold about 150,000 copies. Yeah, 149,990, which were bought by my mother. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was phenomenal. And I really believe that God had a purpose for that. So this was released like 8 years ago, but until today, it's still, it's evangelistic, and I'll tell you later a little about that later. Okay? So this is in between Littworlds. After that event, that was in 2010, in 2012, my first first wife, my late wife, her lupus, she has a condition called systemic lupus. It's an autoimmune disorder. And it came back in 2012. And so my writing stopped. And I had written a book about her healing 7 years before that, called The Heart of Healing. This book, which won a National Book Award for Best Inspirational Book. So I thought she was healed, the sickness came back, and I thought, Lord, you're going to take care of things. But that wasn't the Lord's plan. Within 6 months, mostly in the ICU, my first wife passed away. So that was the dark spot in my life. I missed Littworld because of that event in my life. But then, God would speak to me, and He would, in my intense grief, the Lord would always tell me that I would love again, that I should prepare myself for remarriage. Even if that was the last thing on my mind. I was married for 17 years, friends with her for 5 years, so I had no idea how that could happen. But God had planted that idea in my mind. And soon I was actually thinking about, wait a minute, how does a Christian man prepare himself for marriage? Or remarriage? How do Christian men court today? I've never experienced that. And so I started writing my thoughts. And I started with a thought about purity. Because if you knew me before I became a Christian, my ambition was to be a publisher, but a Playboy kind of publisher. I wanted to be the Playboy publisher of the Philippines and produce pornography. So that's a different story. But that was my ambition. So I started writing this book called Real Men and Pogi. So I'm showing you these things to give you some ideas, that Pogi means pure, obedient, a gentleman, and intense in his love for God and his future wife. It's a colloquial term for handsome. Yeah. So it caught the attention of not just the church, but the secular. It became a mainstream #5 bestseller in the Philippines. But I'm sharing this to you because there are situations in our life. God has already actually planted so many stories in our hearts that we should be thinking about, that should be written. And these life stories should not be hidden. So it became a book. This was the Tagalog English edition, and this was the English edition. And so God did prepare me. I was writing that book, and when I finished the book, I was prepared, and so I got remarried. And this is that's my son from my first marriage, and he would pray every day that, Lord, I pray that you give my dad a new wife, so that I could have a new mom. So the Lord really answered that prayer. So that's in the English edition, part of that story is there, it's integrated into the book. Okay. And then Littworld comes along, 2015, I'm back, and here in Singapore, and it's life-changing for me because now I'm thinking of another book project, and I'm writing, as an entrepreneur, I get invited to speak all over the country in the Philippines, and I usually write about success mindsets, but somehow it didn't seem really right for me because looking at the market, there are a lot of people writing about success, and you wouldn't know the difference between a Christian book on success who sound like a Tony Robbins or a secular book. So when I went to Littworld, I got an idea of maybe making that book into something like fiction. And I met Davis Bunn. Instead of going to the non-fiction track, I went to the fiction track and sat under the feet of Davis Bunn. And this was the result, The Happy Entrepreneur, which was published just 3 days before this Littworld. So it took about 2 years for that idea, and I really struggled with this book. It was really good. So there. After that, Littworld, I began training other aspiring authors. I launched this project called Project Author, and I started teaching other authors in the Philippines and elsewhere how to become an author. and that went to the Haga Institute in Maui, started teaching there a year after. There's MII also carried a webinar of this same or almost the same workshop called Writing to Evangelize. So it's there. But recently, last November, MII sent me to Bhutan. There was the very first training for writing for evangelism, and there are some participants here from Bhutan. There are two of them who are my students who are here right now. And I learned a lot when I was there. And I'll share that with you. Okay. But in the meantime, we're going to have some therapy. Remember therapy? 2 days before. I find it weird that we're in a Littworld, but no one is really writing. So, so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to write. Right. We're writers, right? Right. Okay. So you have like, I said, right? What's that? So can you take out like a notebook or writing pad? And we're going to do some writing therapy. Okay. You're familiar with writing prompts, right? Write a writing prompt. Like, for example, I show you this picture, and I show you this phrase, and you simply just continue from this phrase, continue writing. So look at this picture, it says, as I watch the setting sun, I realize the time has come for me to, and then you just continue. Got it? Continue writing the sentence, make it into a paragraph, okay? So I'll give you 90 seconds to write. Whatever comes to your mind, don't edit, just write. All right? Okay, ready? Get set? Right. Keep it writing, 30 seconds. Just write, don't edit yourself, don't overthink. That's 10. Okay. Now in groups of 2s and 3s, could you like share your stuff, read it to them, read it to your neighbor, and we'll do that for the next day. Okay. If you're really share a little more in the little Hello? 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 All right. How was that? How do you feel? Feeling, right? Any volunteers? Would anyone like to volunteer their partner? Yeah? All right? Okay.
I was told by my husband.
Oh, okay. Can you stand up, please?
Okay, as I watch the setting sun, I realize the time has come for me to anticipate the sunrise. Sunsets remind me of the end of a day. Reminds me to thank God for the day that is about to end, and look forward to a new day. Thank God for sunset and sunrise.
Thank you.
I wrote it actually.
Holy Ghost writer. Anyone else?
I just wrote 2 sentences.
Sorry?
I wrote 2 sentences.
You are okay. Short and sweet. Go ahead.
As I watch the setting sun, I realize the time has come for me to recognize that my life also will start one day, like the sun. But before that, I need to complete the task of trusting Him.
And I heard yours. Yes.
So I realize the time has come for me to sleep. There is a midnight in my country. But there is a good teacher. There is a good teacher who encouraged me to write. So guys, write even you want to sleep.
Like that. Good sharing. Yeah. So realize I gave you 90 seconds. How many words did you write? Amazing. In 90 seconds. In 90 seconds. And many times we have the excuse of, I don't have time. But I gave you 90 seconds and look at what you were able to write. How many 90 seconds gaps do you have in your day where you could actually write? It's a lot. Especially if you're on your way home. Right? Instead of watching a movie, maybe on the airplane, you could write. So, this is it's not my notes, but as an aside, I actually finished books on the airplane. I discipline myself not to eat. I don't need to eat on the plane. I discipline myself not to watch movies. So as soon as I get down, I get my yellow pad and I start writing. And I tell myself, okay, if I finish 3 chapters, my reward is I can watch movies. But because I'm in the flow already, I can get the movie. So just something, because I think many of you here, and I've talked to many of you here, and you said, you have this book, it's a baby, I have a book, you know, I'm wanting to write. But in this environment, we're encouraging. But when you get out there in the world again, you're in a different environment. And sometimes we, like the devotion this morning, we tend to get discouraged. And we keep that book or writing project to ourselves. And I call that the balut syndrome. Are you familiar with balut?
Yes.
Now, how many of you have eaten balut? Of course, from the Philippines. But those of you who are not familiar, balut is what kind of, it's a duck egg. Okay, it's a duck egg. And this is how it's eaten. Okay, it's basically an aborted duckling. Yeah. And it's a in the Philippines it's a delicacy. Okay. In other countries, I can see your faces. But basically, it's really a day or 2 old chick, yeah. And this is how it's eaten. It was featured in the Fear Factor, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's maybe this lunch I brought some. But that's how, but you know, this is like our book, and sometimes we keep it to ourselves, we keep it talking about it, and we enjoy it ourselves, and there's only a company of one person who enjoys that book. Instead of it being, you know, fully grown and
That's my family.
that's your so from balut, I encourage you, let that duck grow into a Peking duck, where not only one person, but you can chop it up and you can have, you know, this kind of, you know, many people can enjoy it. Don't be prideful, don't be, sometimes it's false pride, sometimes like false humility. And we keep ourselves from sharing what the Lord has in our heart, and we make it a balut instead of making it a Peking duck. Remember that you were chosen to tell about the wonderful acts of God, who called you out of darkness and into the wonderful light. So I'm going to frame this this talk or presentation. I don't want to call it presentation, but a discussion on writing with beautiful feet with this. You know, just came up with this. So first, you gotta have the faith. Faith that God has placed this burden in your heart for a reason. You need to have faith that God has placed that book, that idea, no matter how technical or no matter how popular you think it may seem, that God has a reason for everything. He wouldn't place that dream, He wouldn't place that seed in my heart if there was no reason. You need to have faith. There's this book that was written. It's actually a picture book about, you know what those are? Yeah, the snowflakes. And it's evangelistic because this young man at 18 or 19 years old photographed snowflakes under a microscope, and he collected thousands of them and put it together in a book. Never realized he was evangelistic because at the end of the book he realized there must be a God. No one single snowflake is alike. He wondered why God put this, you know, this passion to document all these snowflakes. So I don't know what it is that God has put in your heart, whether it's toenails or snowflakes or whatnot, or fingernails, but He has placed it. You need to have faith that He is faithful. Just like snowflakes, your stories are like fingerprints. There's no one story alike. When I asked you to write those 90 seconds, did you hear anyone who had exactly the same writing as you? No one. I assure you, no one has written exactly. But sometimes in my mind, thinking, you know, everything has been written about, you know, what's so special about my book or my poem or my song. And we tend to be down on ourselves. So you are unique. There's no other story like yours. So only you can share that. Ina Reyes, my editor, would always say, you know, people would rather listen or read stories than to be preached them. And you have a unique story. There's no story in the world like yours. And besides, it's already been, you know, the Lord has already written that in your heart. It says that you show that you are a letter from Christ, the result of our ministry, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. Not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. So, when you start writing, you have beautiful feet, writing for the good news, whatever the Lord has placed in your heart, you need to have that really compelling why. We need to go back to basics and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why does the Lord want me to write this? In other words, why do we want to write? And we need to go back to basics. And there are, in my life, I've discovered that there are three, which go under the same category, three top reasons. And the first one is, do you know the Psalm 107 reason? This is it. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. It's a commandment. How many of you have been redeemed? You've been redeemed. If you've been redeemed, this verse says, you tell your story. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. If you have been redeemed, you tell your story. We write because we've been redeemed. We've been saved. So, we're going to have another writing session. I'll give you 90 seconds to write. You could write from this prompt, or you could write something else. Just look at this picture. But you can start with this. I remember when. And you could use the picture as a metaphor. "90 seconds. Okay, wrap up. Last 10 seconds. Okay, I hate to see people are on a roll. Okay, you know the drill, so go ahead and share it with your BFF, your best friend forever. Same group, sorry. Go ahead.
Mine's good. When I was so quick in my
Alright, hello. You're enjoying your backstories. Hello. 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 Okay, I know you're excited, but okay, who will be able to sleep tonight if you don't read?
I think my partner should read.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was a recruit in the military, not knowing how to swim. The physical training instructor, the PTI, would have us stand in a single file at the deep end of the pool. And with a commanding voice, he ordered, "Jump!" My heart skipped a bit, but I knew I had better jump. I did. I struggled and was sinking fast. The PTI threw me a rope, and that was my line of hope.
Wow.
And that was 90 seconds. He said it's a real story.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, okay, you won't be able to sleep.
I remember when I was a little girl, with a dream so real and that stayed and walked alongside me throughout. Finally achieving that which I thought would make me happy, only to see it crash and burn, left a dark void, pretty much like a cold dark room without warmth or light. Then in that darkness came a tiny spark that lit up the room, radiated from it. From the bottom of the well came a rope as I looked heavenward and saw a smile. Wow. That was from that. The last bit was from that.
So when you see things anywhere around you, and it can act as a prompt, and when you get that idea, you gotta stop. You always have like a notebook with you, or sometimes when I'm driving, I see a billboard that reminds me of something, I'll speak into the, and record it. So don't let these things, especially when you're dreaming, like you just woken up, this, okay, and I'll write it down later, but you forget it. So when let those moments pass away, this is like structured, but look at the quality of the writing that has come out from 90 seconds of writing. Amazing, isn't it? The Lord has given us the most powerful computer in the world. It's our neck-top computers. So it processes so fast. Sometimes we just give ourselves time. I'm not creative, I'm not good enough. But you have proven to me and everyone else that you are right. So on your way home tonight, on your way home tomorrow weekend, as you're going home, congratulations, you've already written maybe perhaps part of your next book. And so when your seatmate asks you, so what do? You used to say, oh, I've just written part of my book, I'm writing. And keep on writing. Yeah? So remember, the reason why is this, because the Lord has commanded, not suggested, that the reading tell your story. And give you the liberty to replace tell with write. Rick Warren says, share stories build a relational bridge that Jesus can walk across from your heart. You mentioned the people who share their 90 seconds words once again. So those stories that connect have built a bridge. And now, Jesus can now walk over that bridge. That's the power of the story. So, next reason is the Psalm 26:7 reason, which is one of my favorites.
Wait.
Yes. Okay. Psalm 26, verse 7 reason. It's a powerful why. Why should we write? One day I was asking the Lord that same question. Lord, what it is that you want me to do with my life. And the Lord led me to open the Bible, a Bible that I just bought for $1 in a discount store. It was a King James Version Bible. And when I opened, the Lord led me to Psalm 6:7, which says that I may publish with a voice of thanksgiving and tell of all thy wondrous works. And when I looked at all the other versions, I discovered that this is the King James Version that has this, that has published. And that spoke to my heart and my mind. Psalm 26, verse 7. And we write because there's an overflow. There's an overflow. Psalms 45, verse 1 says, my heart overflows with a good theme. I address my verses to the king, my tongue is the pen of a ready writer. Wow. What an image. So we write from the overflow. We write from the overflow. We write because of an overflow. We write because of an overflow of gratefulness inside of us. That we've been rescued, we've been saved. My heart overflows. So I'm not going to ask you to do the same assignment again because I just want to manage time. But you get the idea, right?
So we have homework.
You have homework. Yeah, you can do that. And share maybe over lunch. But it's this. Offer your body of work as a living sacrifice, your writing as an act of worship, remembering the goodness of God, praising Him with every stroke of the pen, with every tap of your keyboard. Your writing is an act of worship. Your writing is an act of worship. So number 3 reason, and this is the top reason, is the John chapter 30, verse 21 reason. How many of you know that?
No.
No.
There's no John 30.
Pastor. Pastor Sasha. The John 30, sorry, whisper first.
There's only 20
Yes.
chapters in John.
It's 20:31. Sorry, I was doing this maybe 2 in the morning, but there's no John 30. Yeah? Sorry, John 20:31.
Yes, John 20.
John 20:31. That was a trick question, okay. But John 20:31 says, the context of this is John has just written all these accounts of Jesus' miracles. And then he gives the reason why he has written all these accounts of the miracles. He says, these have been written so that you may believe, you the reader, may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that you may have life in His name. John had a compelling why. I'm writing all these, not for my glory, but because you, the reader, I want you to know that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. That is my why. That is my reason. And we should have the same reason. We write so that our readers may believe and have life. Talk about double rainbows. This is an overflow of rainbows. So we write to evangelize. Come on, we're Christian writers. We should go back to the basics. We write to evangelize. We write so that we don't write to build ourselves up, get our names up. We write to build up the name of the one true living God. One of the best compliments I've ever received was a few weeks ago when I was in a meeting with my publisher, a new publisher, and he saw I brought some books and I showed him this book, or booklet, and he said, "Oh, you're the writer of that? I never knew. I buy hundreds of that and to give away." But he never knew that I was the writer. In fact, when this was published, I never wanted my name on it. But the publisher said, no, it's against our policies. And so I actually gave my full name. No one really knows me by my full passport name, so I put my passport name on it. Nobody knows me by that name. But we don't write so that we can build a Tower of Babylon, for instance. We write so that we can evangelize. And we need to remember as Christians that Jesus has given us, the Great Commission. And there are very few workers. Right? But as writers, we could be missionaries sending missions. Because why? The written word, look at this. It has feet that don't get fatigued, and they are 24/7 missionaries. They work overtime without complaining. The word, the books, the words that you write, they'll never complain. They go to the far ends of the earth and reach, the hidden depths of the heart. I love this quote from Bud Gardner. He said, he says, when I speak, he's a teacher, when I speak, my words echo across the room. But when I write, my words echo across the ages. And how many of you writers have you written something maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and until now, you get feedback or letters from readers? I have experienced that. This book I wrote 5 years ago, I have books I written 10 years ago, and until now I get feedback, I get letters from readers telling me how they were touched by the word. So we write because, remember, we're redeemed. We write because we're grateful, and we write because we're evangelists. So to write with beautiful feet, you need to have faith, and we always need to remember our why, which is to evangelize and share our faith. So a little story, the story of my why, of the overflow. This book that started as a letter. When the Lord saved me from becoming a Playboy publisher in the Philippines, I was so overjoyed. I went to this Bible study. My girlfriend walked me there, and all I heard was the invitation to receive the Lord Jesus Christ as my Savior. I did that, and I was so excited about the Word of God that I started writing letters to my family, to my friends. This 16-page letter, and it was from the overflow. But I wasn't getting any feedback, but just getting strange looks from my friends. I got your letter. So. Then later on, the burden was still there. I decided to make it into a tract, but it didn't look like this. Okay? It didn't look like this. I self-published it. I went to a printer. I did this on Word, and designed it myself, obviously. Did it, asked the printer to print 2,500 copies, and wherever I would go, gas stations, restaurants, I would leave it there. But a few months passed, and I printed another 2,500 copies, and it was gone, but nothing. I didn't know if anyone was reading it, or I didn't know if it was causing any impact, and I needed encouragement. Okay. So again, this is the buhay na hindi din. Life that is never short. But remember, John said, not the book of John, but John Mouse. John Mouse said, and I love what he said here. He said, in the early days of MII, we led a workshop in Romania, one of the most repressed nations at the time. People working and sharing materials by hand. One participant approached our trainer with something of a long face and asked, is it really worth it? I can reach maybe 50 or 75 people at most. They're writing by hand. It was one of those moments when one seeks wisdom from the Lord, and our trainer responded. And this is what he said. Do you think that when Paul wrote his letters to Timothy, that he ever dreamed that letters would be read by people around the world for generations? Or do you think he was thinking of Timothy as his reader? When you write, you have one person in mind. You write personally. You don't think, I'm writing this for the world. So John says, there is nothing too small in the ministry of the word. Even if you have to write for handwritten for 50 people. So let's remember that. So one day, as I finished printing another 2,500 copies and giving away the tracts, I was tired, and I asked the Lord one morning, Lord, can you give me some encouragement, please? Can you just let me know if this is worth it? And the Lord answered by flying with this girl from the spot. So I said that prayer in the morning. I asked, Lord, give me some encouragement. I came home that evening from work. My wife then came home also, and we started greeting each other as we would. And she asked me how my day was. I asked her how her day was. She said, oh, on the way home, I decided to stop by the spot. And when I was signing in my name in the registration, the spot clerk receptionist saw my name, last name Roberto, and she asked, ma'am, are you related to this person? And she pulled out my track. And my wife said, oh yeah, he's my husband. Where did you find this? Oh, on my way home, then the spa girl said, on my way home last night, I was walking on the sidewalk, and I saw the track on the sidewalk. Someone had thrown it. She picked it up, and she was feeling kind of depressed and anxious that day, so she read it on the bus. And by the time she got home, she said that she had prayed a prayer to receive Jesus Christ. And she was wondering, looking for someone who could teach her how to look for a Bible-believing church. And she asked my wife, ma'am, do you know a church where I could go to? Until today, it keeps my, And my wife never knew about my prayer that morning. But the Lord had just encouraged me. The Lord had just encouraged me. I was about to give up at that point. And so I didn't give up because of that encouragement, and went on continuing to self-publish. But then things got, busy. I became a full steam into entrepreneurship. I started winning awards and forgot about the ministry for a couple of years until I went to Mount Carmel in Israel, and I just finished that award-winning event with John Maxwell and starting getting accolades. But there was this gap in my heart, and I was starting to pray to the Lord in Mount Carmel in that church, and the pastor who had just given the message, who I didn't know from Adam then, was saying, why don't you go to that altar and just pray what the Lord wants you to do? Why don't you ask the Lord what it is that He wants you to do? So I started praying. I was in my heart, I knew that I remembered His calling before, Psalm 26, verse 7, but I wanted confirmation. So I went to the altar and knelt down and said, Lord, what is it that you really want me to do in my life? I've been doing all these businesses. If I feel that I'm not really serving you with all my heart, I'm not really doing what it is what you want me to do. So what is it? So I started to kneel down, and then the Lord just spoke to me and said, I already told you before, but if you want to know, okay, look for my servant, look for Pastor David to give a message, and he'll tell you. So I was going to look for Pastor David who gave the message, and as I was standing up, he was right behind me. And so I wasn't able to stand up. He was like that. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and told me, you are a writer. You are a writer for the Lord. Write for the Lord. And he walked away. And I started shaking.
The same for me.
It was amazing how the Lord spoke, and it's like you're resting with Jacob resting, and he touches your hip socket, and I started praising God, saying hallelujah for an hour. I couldn't stop, and I went to Pastor David and he said, it's like something normal for him. He said, don't worry about it. Take your time. But I was never the same. And it really gave me that heart to evangelize. So after that, I went to Ramon Rocha and submitted that little tiny piece. And first, I didn't go to OMF. I went to another Christian publisher, and they rejected it. They said, we don't think it's going to work. So I brought it to Ramon Rocha. I didn't know it was rejected. But he said, okay, we're going to take a chance. And this was the result. And we decided not to make it look like a track. Repackage it so that it's following the tracks as people get it.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't look like it's 5 cents, sells very cheap, but people actually keep it. They're attracted by the cover. So I got a friend of mine who illustrates for Disney, and he did the illustrations inside. And so this is how it was repackaged. And it became the #1 bestseller of OMF Lit from the year it was published until today. It's always in the top 1, number 2. It's like amazing how God can use something that was rejected, something that was being thrown away. And now I get dozens and dozens of stories of how, including my son, who one day I come home and my son says, "Dad, can you read this to me, please?" And he's 5 years old at that time, and I lead him the sinner's prayer as we read this along. Just recently, this year, my wife met an HR manager who gives away these tracts. And she always has it in her pocket, in her purse. One day she prays, "Lord, I'm praying for a divine appointment." So she rides on a bus, and as she sits down, there's an empty seat beside her. And then someone decides to sit down beside her. And the girl in her Bible, okay, and as the girl in the bus asks my wife's friend, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "Why is God so hard on the poor? We're already in hardship, but He chooses to give us more hardship." And then my wife's friend says, "You gotta trust that God has a reason for everything. He loves you despite whatever circumstance you're in." And they get in a conversation, and she finds out that that woman, her daughter, has just had her arm amputated because of the cancer. The cancer lungs, and she's in the ICU, and all of their possessions they've had. So her heart, before she gets off the bus, she decides to give her a copy of this and says, "Read this, and hope you're encouraged." She prays for her, leaves, gets her number. Next week Saturday, she visits her at the hospital ward and finds the whole family there, and she finds this tract there, and she says that the whole family has already read the tract. They're hungry. And this has prepared them for a gospel presentation. So the girl presents the gospel. In that family accepts Christ. And in this gospel tract, it says, your next steps are to look for a Bible-believing church. And so they ask, where can we find a church near our home? And they describe the place. There's no Christian church near there. So they start, she asks for help from a pastor, and they start a home church there. And today that home church has 300 members. You never know what God will do with what you write. So take courage in your writing. God can use your writing. Publish with quality. You know, when we converted and repackaged this, people stopped throwing it away. I would see people holding on to this forever. And write just like you're writing with a friend. Make it personal. If you notice the kind of voice that I take here is not preachy, it's not writing a letter. So E is for excellence. It's a pet peeve of mine because many times as Christians, we tend to gloss over this. And you know what? Climbing, you know the term climbing up to the middle of the mountain? The middle in Latin is midi, and mountain is ochre. So when you climb to the middle of the mountain, it means mediocre. And many times we say, okay, this is good enough, you know, let's go ahead and publish this. This is good enough. But we are called to be excellent. And I really salute the presenters who have shown us the way of excellence. As writers for the Lord, it says that whatever you write, whatever we do, write it for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do all for the glory of God. Right. So I kind of like transpose this. 1 Peter 4:11 really says, do you have the gift of speaking? But I'd like to say, do you have the gift of writing? That write as though God himself were writing through you, and do it with all the strength and energy that God supplies. Then everything you write will bring glory to God through Jesus Christ. Let's not write to build the Tower of Babylon for ourselves. Now, if you're going to write excellent, then let's not give ourselves a hard time. You know, your first project, make it a short book. Write a short book. The books that I've written, they're not, you know, War and Peace, or not, I'm not out to win any literary awards, so they're short. So you might be thinking of writing this big project, but why don't you write something short first? Not something like that will never get finished if you write something like this. So I have a friend, he's Indonesian from the Haga Institute. He told me, Artie, I need your help. I need to finish writing this book. And then he asked for my help. I said, okay, I'll help you. So under one condition, we'll shake hands and we'll have this agreement that by 12 months from now, your book is finished. Okay? So sure. And then if he shook my hand and said, if you're not finished within 12 months, you will pay me. Okay. So his deadline is July 2019. It says, we have this agreement. You will pay me $6,000 if you haven't finished the book by July. American dollars. So question is, if you have an agreement, would you finish that book? If you wait for perfect conditions, King Solomon said, you will never get anything done. And I know this is writer's, syndrome. We always wait for that perfect condition, perfect writing condition. I'm going to write when I, get to this perfect spot. I'm going to write when it's, all the kids have grown up. I'm going to write when my husband is not bugging me anymore, or whatever that perfect condition is. We just proved this morning in 90 seconds that you can write in any condition. And how much does a reader really read? After all, there's a study, which based on this, I came up with a 60-23 rule of thumb. What is it? If your book is 100 pages or less, 60% of those who read it will finish it. Yeah? But look what happens. If it's 200 pages or more, only 20% will finish the book. And if it's more than 200 pages, only 3% will finish reading the book. That's the reality of today's culture. So you may be slaving away at this masterpiece, writing a 300-page, 400-page book, only so that 3% of the people who buy it, because it is a nice cover, will actually read it. So why not finish first whatever it is and make it a 100-page book? And then go ahead and make a volume 2 or a sequel, whatever it is. But in today's society, these are the harsh realities of life. People prefer shorter books. If you go to Michael Hyatt, I got that study from Michael Hyatt. He's the former publisher of Thomas Nelson. Okay. Or what I learned from Michelle Olago from OMF, write poetry. Do you know that poetry is now being read by young people in droves? Readership has increased, doubled since 2012. Have you considered poetry? Online, there's now an Instagram, Insta Poets. Okay, look at the number of posts. There's this, I think she's of Indian descent, Rupi Kaur. She has, when she posts a poem, look at how many likes she gets, 242,000. Okay, and look at her poems. Love is not cruel, we are cruel. Love is not a game, we have made a game out of love. Look at what they've done. The earth cried to the moon. They've turned me into one entire bruise. People are reading. Look at the number of followers she has. 3.1 million followers. Holy cow. That's her. So, or when engage in the reader's understances. And this, for me, is one conviction that I have coming out of Littworld. Reading with your ears. Have you considered, even before writing your book, maybe reading your book first and making it available on Audible or... So just recently, this year's Frankfurt Book Fair, the audio boom is real and it's just getting started. You can get more readers of your book by making it available through the spoken word. Read. And thankfully, MII has published a webinar on, how many of you are subscribed to Littworld? And you can learn how to create and distribute audiobooks, right? On the MII website. So go to littworld.org and look for the webinar. So engage readers at their, what I call their point of theme or need. If you still want to write books, that's good. But we should either cater to what people are reading or buying at that time. So look at what is on Amazon bestseller categories. And these are the top 10 categories: love, romance, sex, inspirational, religious, etc., etc. And my publisher tells me that it's not. I never intended for my books to be in those categories. Health and healing, relationships. This is relationships there, and money. I have a book called the #1 bestseller. Money that's never short. But all my books are always evangelistic. It always leads the reader into a relationship with Jesus Christ, whatever the topic is. Whatever the topic is. So you could do that, place your book or whatever you're working on in those categories. At the same time, remember that have the two main categories of Christian writing. And there are two main categories. The first is redemptive, which deals with the Great Commission, and the other one is creative. Now, my charge to you, I've talked to some of you, many of you are here in creative. So this is for the Great Commission, this is for the greatest commandment, which is to love. It helps believers love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind. So examples of redemptive writing or writing for the Great Commission, we saw that these past few days. Tracts, testimonies, even the Action Bible. This is really a memoir autobiography of the late Nabil Qureshi about seeking Allah and finding Jesus. Very excellent book. Magazine article online that I highly recommend that you seek online and read how he has written this to reach his fellow Indians. I, the convert. He says, my conversion was not a change of religion, it was a change of heart. So these are the types of redemptive writing. Sometimes God gives us a trial or crisis in our life. This is the daughter of our head pastor. His daughter, while her parents, her name is Joy Tachi, her parents, she was 13 years old or 14 years old at the time, and the parents went out to do a Bible study and minister. And when they came back, they saw police cars all over the house, and their daughter and together with two other friends were raped. But she turned this crisis into a ministry. And she wrote a book called When a Good God Allows Rape. It's evangelistic. And it ministers to the hundreds of, or thousands maybe even of women who are raped. So we have an opportunity to use our lives' crisis and point them to where Christ is. Yeah? So sometimes we don't want to wear our heart on our sleeve and we want to keep those things in our life personal. But God can use that mightily to point people to your crisis, to where Christ is. And hopefully you'll consider that. Rick Warren says, other people are going to find Healing in your wounds, your greatest life message, and your most effective ministry will come out of your deepest hurts. And that's another reason for writing. Peter said, "My purpose in writing is to encourage you and assure you that the grace of God is with you, whatever or no matter what happens." That's why we write from the heart. So that's redemptive. Now we go to creative writing. Writing for the greatest commandment. Okay? To love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind. And these are the writings that come like these books, like the great devotionals. Right? Streams in the Desert, Experiencing God. You could also write for the YouVersion. This is a disruptor. A friend of mine is the coordinator, and he says that every day, they so far have 260 million downloads. It's a huge market for readership. You don't get paid for it, but this is how many of you have the YouVersion app? I encourage my students, they're hungry, they're looking for content. And they're just open for writers, Christian writers, to submit their reading plans. So we have this. They have thousands of Bible. So one of my books are there. So there are thousands of Bible study plans or devotionals available. And you can take a picture of this or write to them, and you can submit your 3-day, 5-day devotion.
One thing with YouVersion that I've noticed, it's actually a great way to promote your book.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
if you give free content, just excerpts, small parts of
Yeah.
your content, they will feed back to your site.
Yes.
So actually you're giving something and you can also increase your readership.
That's right. That's right. So a lot of authors are using that to promote their books as well, or in the process of writing their books, they first publish it online. So which category is the writing in? Is it redemptive or is it creative? Or is it both? Both. It could be both. That's what I learned from Bhutan. That God can use any kind of writing for redemption. So if you notice them, this is Becky and this is Pema. They're here at this conference. They were at the seminar we did. But some of these pastors who were there, it's amazing their stories. One pastor was walking on the sidewalk and he saw a Bible, he saw a tract in the trash can, picked it up, and was saved. Another pastor, this pastor there, he said he happened upon a book and the title of the book was very technical. It was a book on baptism, okay, and very doctrinal. But he had nothing else to read. He read that book on baptism, which was, the audience was meant to be pastors and church workers and Bible study leaders. And he read the book, and he had this hunger to be and desire to be baptized after reading it. And in Bhutan, he started looking for a pastor who could baptize him. And he told me the story, this is the truth. He rode on the train asking people where he could be baptized. And he was riding on the train searching for 4 days until he found a church and a pastor who would actually baptize him. So God can use that piece of writing, no matter how doctrinal or technical it can be, to actually be redemptive. Okay. So part 2, writing with beautiful feet in today's context. We have to know what the context is that we're writing in, right? And hopefully within the next 10 minutes, we might not be able to finish this, but we'll start the discussion on this. And today, especially in today's culture, it's like walking on a tightrope. And we have to be aware that the enemy, the battlefield is in the mind, that the enemy is there jabbing away at our minds, right? Because we know as Christians that the battlefield is what? That we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against what? Principalities, rulers of this earth, right? And so I present to you 4 jabs that the enemy is using through literature and the media. Okay? And my call to you in showing this to you is to take up the challenge to write literature that will counterpunch what the enemy is using. For example, we have this. There's a call. Believe in yourself. Stop negative thoughts. Even Christians speak. Yeah. Is there anything wrong with this? No.
You don't need the Lord to accept you.
So, but it's a very subtle jab that people start to believe in, and that is the jab of pride. I have so many friends in the speaking industry or Christians who quote from Tony Robbins. And then, of course, the bestseller, Harry Potter, says that working hard is important, but there's something that matters even more, which is believing in yourself. And you have all these means. But let's be trend benders, and why not write a book like this? Desire God published this. It says, don't believe in yourself. I think that would make a great title for a book. Don't believe in yourself. It's so far just a blog. But we know as Christians that he who trusts in himself is a fool. But he who walks in wisdom is kept safe. Right? And we know this, of course. Isaiah 40:31. Those who trust in the Lord, what? Will find new strength. They will soar like wings on eagles. Literature number 2. This is big. Culture says, pursue happiness. Through what? Through pleasure, through recognition, through materialism and adventure. You know what YOLO means? Of course. You only live once. And there are dozens of books now on Amazon that call out to the youth to do that. But what is the reality? Despite the pursuit of happiness through all of this, what is the reality? This is the reality. Worldwide depression. 350 million globally suffer from depression. People need help. Would you like to know which countries in the world are the most depressed? Do you have an idea?
The richest. The richest.
The richest? Yes, again. Highest, India, in depression and anxiety, and China. The US is third. People need help. And they're getting it from people like these life coaches, like this couple, Roseanne and John Liddy. They have a radio show called The Pursuit of Happiness. People follow them, they attend their seminars. And then only to find out that these people who peddle their philosophy of how to be happy, in the end, what do? Commit double suicide. Where are the books like this that are written in your culture, in your language? The other day, the first day, there was a seminar on, it was delivered in the context of the first world in the U.S. That it's almost impossible to be published by mainstream publishers here in the developing nations. The publishers here in Asia especially are copying authors for their books from here. And they were practically pastors to publish books. Go. Suicide, global phenomenon right now. Do you know that it is now the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds? Every 40 seconds, someone dies of suicide. That is the context right now in the workplace. Almost 1 million people. On Facebook, would you believe people are now posting on Facebook Live their suicides? And that's why I wrote this book, The Happy Entrepreneur. So it may seem, I packaged it as if, if you want to read it, you think, okay, happy entrepreneur, but it deals with an entrepreneur who's dealing with depression and it's actually it deals with depression, it deals with addiction. You know that people who are who spend more time on Facebook suffer from more. So there's a book called written by a Christian pastor called Digital Cocaine, and he's a computer scientist. So he studied how all this digital addiction is causing problems. So we need books like that. Have you experienced depression? Have you almost committed suicide, perhaps? I don't know. Why don't you publish and tell how the Lord brought you out of that? People need it. There's a huge, huge demand and need for that. So my wife's book deals with that. She wrote a book called Keeping Cashew When You Fall. After she won first runner-up in Miss Universe, she fell into depression and almost committed suicide. And then the Lord saved her. You know, a voice told her, don't jump. She was about to jump. She attended a Tony Robbins seminar. And after attending that seminar, she got depressed. She was at her hotel window in Australia where she attended, and she was about to jump. There was a voice telling her, why don't you jump, kill yourself, because all the world's problems, the tsunamis, are your fault. So just jump and end it all. And then she was about to jump, and then she heard a voice that, if you do that, that's not love. And it's love that you're looking for. And she stepped back. And that started her search for true love. That she only found in the Lord. So she tells that in her book. And there are countless people who come to her who have identified with that. And same thing in my book, The Happy Entrepreneur. And there are others that we can talk about. If you go through this, there's relativism, these jabs on sexuality, and whatnot. Priscilla, we have until what time?
5 more minutes.
5 minutes. So this is what's happening. This is the context in which we write. So let me end with this. The last one, T. You really just have to trust. Trust the Lord that the message that He has placed in our hearts will get across. Trust in the Lord that as we write with beautiful feet, He will give it wings to travel to where He wants it to travel, where it's needed. And this world is a dark world. This world needs that light that you have. You need to be writers who shine for the Lord, writers with beautiful feet. And so I trust today that you will have faith in that dream, in that message that God has given you, that you will use that to share the good news, to evangelize, and you'll be excellent in your pursuit of doing that, and finding that you will trust in the Lord, that as a writer, even though there's so much negativity, even though it's difficult, just trust that the Lord will bring those feet of yours and place things on it. So I just want to thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope this, my prayer is that this will bear fruit. So is it okay if I close with a prayer? And then if there's maybe 1 or 2 questions, we can do that. Okay? So let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, you are the author and perfecter of our faith. And Lord, you have placed dreams and you have placed burdens in the hearts of the people who are here to write. And I pray, Lord Father, that you will protect those seeds, those dreams from the enemy. I pray, Lord Father, that you will encourage them, need encouragement, and you will meet them at their place. Lord, I pray that they write so that people will see the hope that they have. They will write and people will see how they were redeemed, that they will write and see how good and faithful that you are. I thank you, Lord Father, for the stories that you have written and will be writing through the people, your people who are here. I praise you, Lord Father, for the testimonies that will come out of this. And I thank you, Lord, for you, again, are the author and the perfecter of our faith. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. vitamins, your vitamins. Take a deep breath. Yes. Thank you. Questions?
Are you a full-time writer now? You said you are.
Oh, yeah, you know, ever since God, you know, said, that has been my constant struggle. Until today, I honestly say, you know, I said, no, I think Lord, give me another year, and I'll do this person, I'll be full time. So, my prayer is that Lord, please be patient with me. Don't send a whale to swallow me, and don't say I go where you want me to go. So, pray for me that everything that I'm doing, again, you know, I feel like that's God's calling to be full time, right? But you know, I'm setting things up. You know, I'm gonna be a father again, and I need to provide. And everyone I talk to here said, you can't make a living as a full-time writer. And so I'm figuring, I'm wrestling with that. So but when I told my friend about that, they asked me, so how are you going to provide for your family? And then I found myself saying, well, if the Lord gives you the vision, then He'll give you the provision. So that is my full-time, right?
As you teach, you are being a writer, and you are giving and you will receive.
Thank you. I received that. So someone else, and then maybe we could break. Someone else raise your hand. So anyway, you know where to find me, and I'd be happy to sit down and have a meeting with you. So again, thank you so much. Praise the Lord. Thank God. And I do have a book table. I have a book table over there, and so there's still some copies left of these books. And it's an honesty system. You just drop it in the box, and you can just take a book. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Arlie. So if you enjoyed the session, you know, let's encourage him through your feedback on the Hula app to leave your ratings for the session. And again, there is filming going on next door, so please kindly make your way up to lunch at the lobby area. So thank you for being such a wonderful crowd. Enjoy your lunch break.
Thank you. Really? Yeah, praise God.
Yeah,
Praise
yeah,
God.
he did.